Most people think power is loud. They think strength is emotional. They think reacting proves something. They're wrong. The calm mind always wins. While others panic, explain, argue, or explode, the calm mind watches, waits, moves with precision. This audiobook will show you why emotional silence is not weakness. It is dominance. It is control. It is the final form of mental strength. If you learn nothing else from this book, remember this. You don't need to react to win. You need to remain calm. Chapter 1. Emotional control is a weapon. Most people don't understand this truth. Emotion is not just a feeling. Emotion is data. Emotion is a signal. Every time you react emotionally, you leak information. You tell people what hurts you, what excites you, what controls you. And the moment someone knows that, they have leverage. That's why emotional control is not self-help fluff. It's a weapon. And like any weapon, it can either protect you or destroy you. You have a choice. Let's be clear. When you react emotionally, you are not being real. You are being predictable. And predictable people are easy to manipulate. Anger tells them where to push. Defensiveness tells them where you feel weak. Excitement tells them what you want too badly. Fear tells them when you will fold. That's the key. Emotion reveals position. Calm conceals it. And in every competitive environment, work, relationships, negotiations, life, the one who reveals less controls more. You have a choice. You can react, or you can observe. Here's what calm actually does. Calm denies others information. Calm removes their leverage. Calm forces them to guess. And when people guess, they make mistakes. That's why silence is uncomfortable for insecure people. They need reactions to orient themselves. They need feedback to feel powerful. When you don't give it to them, they unravel. Not because you attacked them, but because you didn't. Control is strength. Let's dismantle a lie. You've been told that expressing emotions is healthy, that holding back is weakness, that silence means suppression. That's false. Uncontrolled emotion is not honesty. It's lack of discipline. There's a difference between feeling and spilling, between awareness and exposure. Strong people feel everything. They just don't hand it to the world. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. Look at any situation where power dynamics matter. A tense meeting, a disagreement, a confrontation, a negotiation. Who holds the advantage? Not the one talking the most. Not the one explaining. Not the one defending themselves emotionally. It's the one who stays calm, listens, waits. Silence slows the game down. And the person who controls the pace controls the outcome. You have a choice. Speed up emotionally, or slow down strategically. Most people panic when emotions rise. They rush to clarify. They rush to justify. They rush to prove. Why? Because they think silence means losing. But silence is not losing. Silence is loading. That's the key. When you don't react, something interesting happens. Others talk more. They over-explain. They contradict themselves. They reveal motives they meant to hide. You didn't extract information aggressively. You simply didn't interrupt them. Silence is pressure, and pressure reveals truth. Control is strength. Now let's get practical. What does emotional control look like in real life? It looks boring. It looks like pausing before responding. It looks like not correcting people immediately. It looks like letting awkward silence exist. It looks like not reacting to provocation. It looks like restraint. And restraint is power. Here's a rule to burn into your mind. If someone wants a reaction from you, deny it. They want your anger? Pause. They want your defensiveness? Stay neutral. They want your excitement? Delay. They want your fear? Breathe. You have a choice. This is where discipline replaces instinct. Your instinct wants to protect your ego, to explain, to justify, to strike back. Discipline wants control, position, leverage, and discipline always wins long term. That's the key. You don't need to win every moment. You need to win the situation. And emotional reactions sacrifice the situation for momentary relief. Yelling feels good for 5 seconds. Explaining feels good for 5 minutes. Reacting feels good right now, but it costs you later. It's not about feeling better. It's about staying in control. Let's talk about restraint. Restraint is not weakness. Restraint is delayed dominance. Anyone can react. Very few can remain calm when provoked. That's why calm people feel intimidating. Not because they are aggressive, but because they are unreadable. You can't push what you can't read. That's the key. Now understand this clearly. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to justify your composure. You don't need their permission. Your emotional discipline does not exist for their comfort. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. When emotion rises, do nothing first. Not something clever. Not something polite. Nothing. Pause. Breathe. Let the emotion pass without action. Action can come later. Control must come first. That's the key. Start practicing emotional delay. Delay your responses by seconds, then minutes, then hours. Each delay increases your power, because once emotion fades, clarity appears. And clarity is lethal. Control is strength. Remember this: the person who reacts first loses leverage. The person who stays calm gains options. Options are power, and power comes from control. You have a choice. This chapter gave you the foundation. Emotional control is not about being nice. It's not about being passive. It's about denying others access to your internal state. When you control that, you control the situation. You've learned how emotional reactions give information, how silence removes leverage, how calm turns into advantage. Now you understand the weapon, but knowing isn't enough. Next, you'll learn why emotional noise destroys people before they even realize it. You've learned restraint. Now let's expose the cost of losing it. Chapter 2. The loud mind loses first. The first person to lose control is always the first person to lose. Not later. Not eventually. First. The loud mind doesn't collapse at the end. Collapses at the beginning. That's the truth most people never see. A loud mind is not confident. It's overloaded. Talks too much. Reacts too fast. Explains too early. Moves without thinking. And every one of those behaviors signals weakness. You have a choice. You can let your mind run loud, or you can discipline it. Here's the hard reality. The louder your mind, the less control you have. Mental noise creates urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. Mistakes create regret. That chain is automatic. That's the key. Think about anger. Anger feels powerful, but it shortens your vision. When you're angry, you don't see options. You see impulses. You interrupt. You escalate. You commit to words and actions you can't undo. That's not strength. That's exposure. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Think about anxiety. An anxious mind rushes. It wants certainty now. It wants relief immediately. So it agrees too quickly, explains too much, accepts bad terms just to end discomfort. That's how people lose negotiations, relationships, respect. Quiet people wait. Loud minds beg for resolution. That's the difference. Think about excitement. Even positive emotion can make you weak. When you show too much excitement, you reveal attachment. Attachment kills leverage. If someone knows you want something badly, they control the pace. That's the key. A loud mind always gives away position. Tells people, I need this. I care too much. I can't sit with discomfort. And once they know that, they adjust around it. You have a choice. Now let's talk about speed. The loud mind moves fast. But speed without control is not power. It's recklessness. Calm minds move slower, but they move cleaner. They let others rush. They let others talk. They let others expose themselves. Then they move once. Decisively. Control is strength. Look closely at people who lose often. They argue emotionally. They interrupt constantly. They can't sit in silence. They mistake urgency for importance. But urgency is rarely important. It's usually emotional discomfort trying to escape. That's the key. Silence terrifies a loud mind, because silence removes stimulation. No reaction, no feedback, no validation. So the loud mind fills the gap, talking, explaining, overcorrecting, and every word reduces power. Here's a rule you must internalize. The person who speaks to relieve tension is giving up control. Silence holds tension, and whoever holds tension controls the room. You have a choice. This is why emotional discipline feels unnatural at first. Your nervous system wants release. Your ego wants expression. Your habits want noise. Discipline says no. Discipline says wait. That's the key. Now let's get practical again. When you feel the urge to react quickly, that is your cue to slow down. Not to react smarter. Not to react better. To pause. Even a 3-second pause separates discipline from impulse. 3 seconds changes outcomes. Train this behavior. When your emotions spike, lower your volume. Speak slower. Use fewer words. Shorter sentences. Or don't speak at all. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Understand this deeply. A loud mind is easy to read. A quiet mind is impossible to predict. And unpredictability is power. That's the key. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to prove intelligence. You don't need their permission. Your calm already communicates strength. Here's another truth most people miss. Loud minds live in the present moment only. They react to what they feel now. Calm minds operate from the future. They ask, what happens if I say this? What leverage do I lose? What position do I gain by waiting? That gap in thinking is the gap between winners and losers. This is why calm people often look detached. They are detached from impulse, detached from emotional urgency, detached from ego battles. That detachment keeps them ahead. It's not about reaction. It's about position. Let me be blunt. If you are always reacting, you are always behind. You're responding to moves instead of setting them. You have a choice. So here's your discipline for this chapter. Reduce your mental noise. Less commentary in your head. Less emotional storytelling. Less urgency. When something happens, observe before you interpret. Facts first. Emotion later. That's the key. The loud mind loses first, because it gives away control immediately. The calm mind wins, because it never rushes the opening move. You've now seen the cost of mental noise. Next, you'll learn why calm is not passive at all, and why stillness is one of the most aggressive strategies you can use. You quieted the noise. Now let's turn calm into calculation. Chapter 3. Calm is not passive, it's calculated. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm means hesitation. They think calm means fear. They think calm means doing nothing. They're wrong. Calm is not passive. Calm is calculated. That's the key. A passive person avoids action. A calm person delays action on purpose. There's a difference. One is afraid to move. The other is choosing when to move. And timing is power. You have a choice. Let's clear something up immediately. Calm does not mean you let people walk over you. It means you don't let them rush you. Pressure is a tactic. Urgency is a weapon used against undisciplined minds. When someone pushes you to respond now, they are trying to steal your thinking time. Calm people protect their thinking time. That's the key. Think about this. Every bad decision you've made had one thing in common. You moved too fast. You spoke too early. You agreed too quickly. You reacted before you understood the full picture. Speed didn't save you. It exposed you. It's not about speed. It's about control. Calm gives you space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between emotion and action. Space between pressure and decision. And in that space, intelligence operates. That's why disciplined people appear slow. They're not slow. They're precise. Here's the truth nobody teaches you. Immediate reactions are emotional. Delayed responses are strategic. Emotion wants relief. Strategy wants advantage. You have a choice. When you stay calm, something powerful happens internally. Your breathing slows. Your vision widens. Your thinking sharpens. You stop seeing the moment. You start seeing the system. Calm turns chaos into patterns. That's the key. Now look at aggressive people. They talk over others. They interrupt. They dominate space. But watch closely. They are reactive. They are easy to bait. They are easy to predict. Aggression without calm is just noise. Calm people don't chase control. They let others give it to them. By waiting, by listening, by not revealing their hand. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. Control is strength. Let's talk about calculated restraint. Calculated restraint means you know exactly what you could do, and you choose not to. That choice terrifies insecure people, because they don't know what you're planning. That's the key. Here's an example. Someone challenges you publicly. Your ego screams to respond. A passive person freezes. An emotional person attacks. A calm person pauses. They let the challenger keep talking. Let them escalate. Let them overreach. Then, one sentence, one move, one decision, and the situation flips. That's calculation. Calm is not indecision. Calm is delayed commitment. You commit only when the odds are clear. You don't gamble emotionally. You execute deliberately. It's not about reaction. It's about leverage. Now let's bring this into your daily life. Most people answer messages immediately, agree immediately, defend immediately. Why? Because silence makes them uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is training. Here's a discipline you must adopt. When something triggers you, do not respond until you understand three things. What do they want from me right now? What happens if I say nothing? What happens if I wait? Those questions turn emotion into strategy. That's the key. Calm also protects you from manipulation. Manipulators rely on urgency. They want you emotional, rushed, off balance. Calm removes their tools. If they can't rush you, they can't control you. You don't need their permission to slow down. Understand this clearly. The calm person always appears to have options. Because they do. Options come from patience. And patience comes from discipline. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. Let's talk about power dynamics. The person who needs an answer now is weaker than the person who can wait. Waiting reverses leverage. Silence reverses leverage. Calm reverses leverage. That's the key. This is why calm feels uncomfortable at first. Your mind is used to movement, noise, reaction. Stillness feels wrong. But wrong does not mean ineffective. Stillness is where control lives. Here's another hard truth. If you are always available, always responsive, always emotionally accessible, you are easy to manage. Calm people are not easy to manage. They don't move on demand. They move with intention. Now let's be precise. Calm does not mean indecisive waiting forever. Calm means waiting until the right moment. And when that moment comes, calm people act without hesitation. That's what makes them dangerous. Look at your past conflicts. The moment you regret is not when you waited too long. It's when you spoke too early. That's the pattern. You have a choice. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Practice strategic delay. Delay your responses on purpose, not to avoid, but to observe. Delay is not weakness. Delay is analysis. That's the key. Start small. Don't reply instantly. Don't explain instantly. Don't commit instantly. Let your calm do the work. Remember this. Calm is not the absence of action. Calm is the preparation for decisive action. And decisive action, when timed correctly, ends situations fast. Control is strength. You now understand something most people never will. Calm is not passive. It is calculated. You are no longer reacting. You are positioning. And positioning wins. But calm does something else. Something even more powerful. It destabilizes weak minds. You learn to slow down. Next, you'll learn how your silence forces others to expose themselves. You mastered calculation. Now let's watch what silence does to everyone else. Chapter 4. Emotional silence unsettles weak minds. Silence is not neutral. Silence is pressure. And pressure reveals everything. That's the key. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. Not because silence is dangerous, but because it removes their control. When there's no reaction, no feedback, no emotional exchange, they don't know where they stand. And weak minds panic when they don't know their position. You have a choice. Here's a truth you must understand. Emotionally weak people rely on responses to orient themselves. They need approval. They need resistance. They need something to react against. When you give them nothing, they start talking. And talking leads to exposure. That's the key. Think about every insecure person you've ever met. They over-explain. They justify constantly. They fill silence with noise. Why? Because silence forces self-awareness. And self-awareness is uncomfortable for undisciplined minds. Silence removes distraction. When you stay emotionally silent, you create a vacuum. And nature hates a vacuum. So people rush to fill it. They reveal motives. They reveal fears. They reveal intentions. You didn't interrogate them. You simply waited. Control is strength. This is why silence feels intimidating. Not because it's aggressive, but because it offers no validation. People don't know if they're winning. They don't know if you agree. They don't know if you're offended. That uncertainty destabilizes them. That's the key. Let's talk about power dynamics again. The person who needs reassurance is not the one in control. The person who can sit in silence without emotional leakage. That person controls the frame. You have a choice. Here's how this plays out in real life. Someone criticizes you. They want a reaction. Anger means they hit a nerve. Defensiveness means they were right. Explaining means you care about their judgment. Silence gives them nothing. And that nothing drives them crazy. They escalate. They push harder. They overplay their hand. That's when they lose. Silence does something else. It forces projection. When people don't know what you're thinking, they assume you're thinking what they would think. Insecure people project insecurity. Manipulative people project manipulation. You learn who they are by watching what they assume about you. That's the key. Understand this deeply. Silence is a mirror. People see themselves in it. And many don't like what they see. Now let's dismantle another lie. You've been told silence is awkward. That silence must be filled. That silence is socially dangerous. No. Uncontrolled silence is awkward. Intentional silence is commanding. There's a difference. Intentional silence has posture, eye contact, stillness. It says, I'm not rushed. I'm not threatened. I'm not reactive. That message lands harder than any argument. It's not about expression. It's about discipline. Here's something critical. Silence works best when you're comfortable inside it. If your silence is anxious, people feel it. If your silence is calm, people respond to it. Calm is the foundation. That's the key. Let's talk about emotional bait. Provocation is a test. They poke. They tease. They challenge. They want to see if you flinch. Silence is how you pass the test. Not passive silence. Controlled silence. Here's what happens when you don't react. Provokers escalate. They become louder, more aggressive, more obvious. They expose themselves. You didn't attack them. They attacked their own image. Control is strength. This is why emotional silence is dangerous to them. They can't predict you. They can't steer you. They can't read you. And unreadable people are hard to manipulate. That's the key. Now let's get practical again. Here's a behavior you must practice. When someone pushes emotionally, do not respond immediately. Hold eye contact. Breathe. Stay neutral. Let the silence do the work. Do not rush to relieve discomfort. Discomfort is not your enemy. Discomfort is leverage. You have a choice. Another rule. Never break silence. To prove your point, if your point requires emotional urgency, it's weak. Strong positions survive silence. That's the key. Now understand this. Silence does not mean submission. Silence means observation. You are gathering data, watching behavior, noting patterns, and patterns reveal intent. People reveal more in discomfort than they ever do in comfort. Silence creates discomfort, so silence creates truth. Let's talk about authority. Authority is felt, not announced. People with authority don't need to assert it verbally. They let others feel it. Silence amplifies presence. You don't need their permission. This is especially important in conflict. If you argue emotionally, you join the chaos. If you stay silent, you stand above it. Above chaos is where control lives. That's the key. Here's your discipline for this chapter. Practice intentional silence. Not avoidance. Not withdrawal. Intentional. Stay present. Stay calm. Say less than necessary. Reduce your emotional output by half. Half the words. Half the reactions. Half the explanations. Watch what happens. People will fill the gap for you. Remember this. The emotionally weak cannot tolerate silence. They must fill it to survive. The emotionally disciplined thrive in it. You have a choice. You've now seen what silence does to others. It destabilizes. It exposes. It reverses power. But silence alone is not enough. Silence without detachment can still trap you emotionally. Next, you'll learn how detachment turns silence into authority. You unsettled weak minds. Now let's remove emotional hooks entirely. Chapter 5. Detachment is the source of authority. Most people think authority comes from position, a title, a role, a status. They're wrong. Authority comes from detachment. That's the key. Attachment is invisible weakness. The moment you need an outcome, need approval, need understanding, you lose authority, because need creates tension, and tension leaks through behavior. You have a choice. Detachment does not mean you don't care. It means you are not controlled by caring. There is a difference. Attachment says, I must win this. I must be liked. I must be understood. Detachment says, I'll act correctly either way. And that mindset changes everything. Let's be blunt. The person who cares the least about immediate validation holds the most power in the room. Why? Because they are free. Free to wait. Free to walk away. Free to say no. Control is strength. Attachment narrows your vision. When you want something too much, you stop seeing alternatives. You compromise too early. Explain too much. Accept less than you should. Detachment restores perspective. It brings your mind back online. That's the key. Think about negotiations. The side that needs the deal loses the deal. They rush. They justify. They concede. The detached side waits. Waiting forces concessions. Silence forces concessions. Detachment creates leverage. Now apply this to everyday life. When you are emotionally attached to being right, you argue. When you are detached, you observe. When you are attached to approval, you perform. When you are detached, you lead. That's the difference. Let's address a common fear. People think detachment makes them cold. No, detachment makes you stable. Unstable people swing emotionally. Stable people remain centered. Stability feels like authority. To everyone watching, that's the key. Here's something most people never realize. Emotional attachment is visible. It shows up in tone, in pacing, in over-explaining, in defensiveness. You can't hide it. Detachment removes those signals entirely. This is why calm, detached people seem intimidating without trying. They don't chase agreement. They don't argue for acceptance. They don't react to disrespect. They don't need their permission. And that unsettles people. Attachment keeps you trapped in other people's frames. Their opinions matter too much. Their reactions guide your behavior. Detachment breaks that loop. You move from reactive to self-directed. That's the key. Let's talk about emotional hooks. An emotional hook is anything that can pull a reaction out of you. Criticism, praise, rejection, approval. If someone can hook you emotionally, they can control you. Detachment cuts the hook. Here's a rule you must internalize. If something can emotionally control you, you are not in authority. Authority begins where emotional dependency ends. It's not about feeling less. It's about needing less. Now let's get practical. How do you train detachment? You stop assigning meaning immediately. Most people react not to events, but to the stories they tell themselves. He disrespected me. They don't value me. I'm losing. Those are interpretations. Detachment delays interpretation. That's the key. When something happens, say this internally. Interesting. Not good. Not bad. Just information. That single shift breaks emotional momentum. Next, remove urgency. Urgency is attachment disguised as importance. Very few things are urgent. Most things feel urgent because your ego wants relief. Detach from urgency. Pause. Another discipline. Stop chasing closure. Closure is emotional comfort, not strategic advantage. Detached people don't need closure. They need clarity. Clarity comes with time. Now let's address relationships. Attachment makes you overinvest early. Detach and you observe behavior first. Who shows consistency? Who respects boundaries? Who escalates emotionally? Detached observation protects you from bad decisions. In conflict, detachment is everything. When someone insults you, they want emotional engagement. If you engage, you've accepted their frame. Detachment refuses the frame. Silence. Calm. Minimal response. That's authority. Here's another truth. The moment you stop needing to be understood, people start listening more carefully. Why? Because you're no longer pleading. You're stating. That's the key. Detachment also protects your energy. Emotional attachment drains you. Constant processing. Constant rumination. Detachment frees mental bandwidth. You become sharper. more focused, less reactive. Control is strength. Let's talk about ego. Ego hates detachment. Ego wants recognition, validation, victory. Detachment starves ego and feeds discipline, and discipline outperforms ego every time. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Practice outcome independence. Do the right thing, without attachment to result. Speak calmly, without attachment to agreement. Act decisively, without attachment to praise. That's the key. Start small. Detach from small wins. Detach from small losses. Watch how quickly your emotions stabilize. Stability compounds. Remember this. Detached people are hard to manipulate, hard to rush, hard to intimidate. That's why detachment feels powerful. Because it is. You now understand where authority truly comes from. Not force, not noise, not emotion. Detachment. You removed emotional hooks. You cut dependency. You reclaimed control. But there is still a test ahead. Detachment without pressure is easy. Next, you'll face the environment. That breaks most people. Pressure. You've learned detachment. Now let's see what happens when pressure arrives. Chapter 6. Stop explaining yourself. The need to explain is the need for approval. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. Every unnecessary explanation is a confession of insecurity. That's the key. Let's be direct. Confident people do not explain themselves emotionally. Disciplined people do not justify their decisions. Calm people do not argue for their value. They act. They decide. They move on. You have a choice. Most explanations are not about clarity. They're about discomfort. You explain because silence feels risky. You explain because you fear being misunderstood. You explain because you want validation. But here's the problem. The more you explain, the less authority you project. Control is strength. Think about it. When someone is truly confident, do they rush to justify themselves? No. They state their position. Then they stop. Silence does the rest. Explaining too much does three dangerous things. First, it lowers your status. Second, it invites debate. Third, it gives others control over the frame. That's the key. When you explain, you hand people your reasoning and ask them to approve it. That's not leadership. That's submission. You don't need their permission. Let's dismantle another lie. You've been told that good communication means explaining everything clearly. False. Good communication means saying what needs to be said and nothing more. Over-explaining is emotional leakage. It's not about clarity. It's about discipline. Here's a hard truth. People who explain too much are easy to challenge. Why? Because they reveal uncertainty. Every extra sentence says, "Please understand me. Please agree. Please don't judge me." And people sense that immediately. Strong people do not fear being misunderstood. Weak people do. That's the difference. Now look at how explanations actually work. When you explain emotionally, you don't convince strong minds. You only empower weak ones to argue with you, because once you explain, they think your position is negotiable. That's the key. Silence closes negotiation. Statements open it. Explanations beg for it. Here's an example. You say, "I've decided not to do this." That's authority. You say, "I've decided not to do this because," and suddenly you're defending yourself. You have a choice. Most people explain. Because they want to control perception. They want to look good, fair, reasonable. But authority does not come from appearing reasonable. It comes from being grounded. Let's talk about ego. Ego wants to be seen as right. Discipline wants to be effective. Explaining serves ego. Silence serves results. That's the key. Now understand this clearly. If your decision is sound, it doesn't need emotional explanation. If your boundary is real, it doesn't need justification. If your value is solid, it doesn't need defense. You don't need their permission. Over-explaining also drains your energy. You replay conversations. You rehearse arguments. You relive emotions. Calm people don't do this. They say less. They move forward. Here's another truth. The more you explain, the more people question you. Not because they disagree, but because you invited them to. That's the key. Strong communicators use short sentences. Clear, direct, finished. They don't leave emotional doors open. Let's get practical. When someone challenges you, ask yourself one question. Is an explanation necessary? Or am I just uncomfortable? That question will save you. Here's a discipline to practice. Replace explanations with statements. Not aggressive. Not emotional. Neutral. I've decided. This works for me. That's not something I'm doing. Then stop talking. Silence after a statement is what makes it powerful. Silence forces acceptance or exposure. If they push, they reveal insecurity. Not you. Another rule. Never explain to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Explanations don't fix bad faith. They feed it. That's the key. Most people explain because they want closure. But closure is emotional comfort. Authority doesn't chase comfort. It maintains position. This applies everywhere. Work, relationships, family, conflict. The moment you stop explaining, people adjust their behavior around you because they realize your boundaries are not negotiable. Here's something important. People respect clarity, not justification. They respect firmness, not emotional transparency. They respect calm certainty. Control is strength. Let's talk about silence again. Silence after a decision signals confidence. Silence after a boundary signals finality. Silence after a statement signals authority. That's the key. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Reduce your explanations by 70%. If one sentence works, don't add a second. If silence works, don't speak. Train yourself to stop early. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your ego will panic. Your mind will race. Good. That discomfort is discipline being built. Remember this. You explain when you doubt yourself. You stay silent when you trust yourself. And trust is felt. You've now removed another weakness. You stopped reacting. You stopped over-talking. You stopped leaking emotional information. But now comes the real test. What happens when pressure arrives and there's no room for explanation? You've learned silence. You've learned detachment. Next, you'll learn why pressure exposes discipline instantly. Chapter 7. Pressure reveals the undisciplined. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. That's the key. Most people believe they will rise under pressure. They won't. You don't rise to pressure. You fall to your level of discipline. Pressure strips away intention, personality, and image. What remains is habit. You have a choice. When pressure appears, emotion looks for control. The heart races. The breath shortens. The mind demands action. And if you are undisciplined, you give it what it wants. You talk. You rush. You explain. You commit too early. Pressure doesn't ask who you want to be. It reveals who you trained yourself to be. Look closely at people under stress. They speak faster. They interrupt. They repeat themselves. They contradict their own positions. Why? Because pressure removes the buffer between emotion and behavior. That buffer is discipline. Control is strength. Undisciplined people hate pressure because pressure removes their ability to perform confidence. They rely on calm environments to look capable. When things get tight, they fall apart. Their tone changes. Their posture collapses. Their words lose precision. Pressure tells the truth. Here's the uncomfortable reality. If pressure makes you emotional, you are not calm, you are conditional. Calm that only exists when things are easy is not calm. It's comfort, and comfort collapses under stress. That's the key. Disciplined people respond to pressure differently. Pressure slows them down. It sharpens them. It forces focus. They speak less, not more. They move deliberately, not urgently. They choose restraint over relief because they've trained for this moment. Pressure punishes emotional habits. If your habit is reacting, pressure amplifies reaction. If your habit is explaining, pressure turns you into a talker. If your habit is seeking approval, pressure makes you beg. Pressure does not forgive bad habits. This is why people regret things said under stress. I shouldn't have said that. I reacted too fast. I panicked. Those weren't accidents. They were untrained responses. Pressure also reveals attachment. What you are attached to controls how you behave under stress. Attached to being liked, you fold. Attached to being right, you argue. Attached to outcome, you rush. Detachment weakens pressure. That's the key. Let's talk about silence under pressure. Silence becomes hardest when consequences feel real. That's when your mind screams, "Say something now." Silence says no. Silence buys time. Time restores control. Here's a rule you must internalize. Under pressure, do less better. Fewer words. Fewer decisions. More intention. Precision beats volume every time. Pressure also reveals ego. Ego wants to protect image. So under pressure, ego defends, blames, explains, justifies. Discipline doesn't protect image. It protects position. That's the difference. Think about leaders. The worst leaders panic publicly. They overcommunicate emotionally. They rush decisions to appear decisive. Strong leaders do the opposite. They pause. They gather information. They speak last. And when they speak, people listen. You don't need their permission. Pressure reveals whether your calm is real. If your calm disappears when challenged, it was never discipline. It was convenience. Real calm holds under stress. Now let's get practical. Pressure training is not optional. You don't prepare for pressure by reading about it. You prepare by practicing restraint. When it's uncomfortable, here's how you train. When rushed, slow your speech. When challenged, reduce your words. When stressed, control your breath. Your body must obey you before your mind will. That's the key. Another discipline. Never decide at peak emotion. Pressure tries to force decisions at the worst possible time. Delay when possible. Pause when unsure. Sleep on decisions that matter. Delay is not weakness. Delay is discipline. Pressure reveals emotional leakage. Watch for these signals. Talking too much. Explaining repeatedly. Justifying obvious decisions. Changing tone emotionally. These are signs of lost control. Awareness stops the spiral. Now understand this. Pressure is not an enemy. It is a filter. It separates the trained from the emotional. It exposes who has discipline and who relies on comfort. This is why calm people are trusted. Not because they know more, but because they don't fall apart. When things get heavy, stability creates confidence in others. That's authority. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Create pressure on purpose. Set time limits. Have difficult conversations without rushing. Practice silence when challenged. Make pressure familiar. When pressure becomes familiar, it loses its power. And when pressure loses power, you gain control. Control is strength. Remember this. Pressure will come. Always. You don't get to choose that, but you do get to choose whether it exposes discipline or exposes weakness. You have a choice. You've now seen the test pressure applies. It strips emotion. It reveals habits. It exposes training. You've learned how to remain intact when others unravel. But discipline alone is not the end. There is one final refinement. The kind of discipline that looks boring, unimpressive, and unstoppable over time. You survived pressure. Now let's talk about why boring discipline wins. Chapter 8. The quiet mind thinks ahead. Most people live inside the moment. They react to what they feel now. They respond to what just happened. They make decisions to relieve immediate discomfort. That's why they stay trapped. The quiet mind thinks ahead. That's the key. Emotional people live in the present. Calm people operate in the future. Emotion asks, how do I feel right now? Discipline asks, where does this lead? That single difference separates chaos from control. You have a choice. When your mind is loud, your time horizon shrinks. Anger wants release now. Fear wants safety now. Ego wants validation now. Now. And anything decided in now is usually paid for later. It's not about relief. It's about discipline. The quiet mind stretches time. It steps back. It zooms out. It sees consequences before they arrive. That's foresight. And foresight is power. Think about how most people ruin situations. They say something emotional. They send a message too fast. They make a decision under urgency. Then later they say, I should have thought this through. They didn't lack intelligence. They lacked patience. That's the key. Strategic patience beats emotional urgency every time. Urgency feels important, but urgency is often just emotion demanding action. Patience feels boring, but patience protects position. Think long. Move slow. Here's a hard truth. If you are always reacting, you are always behind. You're responding to circumstances instead of shaping outcomes. The quiet mind gets ahead by refusing to rush. Calm people don't rush conversations. They don't rush decisions. They don't rush commitments. They let information come to them. While others speak, they listen. While others rush, they wait. That waiting is not empty. It's strategic. Let's talk about anticipation. The quiet mind doesn't predict perfectly, prepares broadly. It asks, if this continues, what happens? If I say yes now, what does that cost later? If I react emotionally, what leverage do I lose? Those questions change behavior. That's the key. Most people ask the wrong question. They ask, what should I do right now? Calm people ask, what do I want this situation to look like later? That one shift moves you out of reaction and into design. The quiet mind also understands timing. Timing is everything. The right move at the wrong time is still a mistake. Calm people don't force timing. They wait for alignment. Emotion forces. Discipline positions. Think about arguments. Emotional people try to win the moment. Calm people try to win the outcome. Winning the moment often costs you the relationship, the leverage, or the long-term advantage. Winning the outcome sometimes means staying quiet now. That's the key. Here's another truth. The quiet mind leaves exits. It doesn't corner itself emotionally. It doesn't burn bridges impulsively. It doesn't make statements it can't walk back. Because it's thinking ahead. Emotional urgency loves finality. I'm done. This is over. I'll never. Calm minds avoid dramatic closures. They keep doors cracked, options alive, flexibility intact. Options are power. Let's talk about silence again. Silence is a planning tool. While others fill space with words, you fill space with thought. Silence buys you time. Time buys you clarity. Clarity buys you advantage. Control is strength. This is why quiet people often seem slower. They're not slower. They're processing deeper layers. They're watching patterns, not moments. Emotion reacts to events. Calm tracks trajectories. That's the difference. Think about patterns in people. Inconsistency, escalation, avoidance, manipulation. You can't see patterns if you're emotionally involved in every interaction. Distance reveals patterns. The quiet mind maintains distance. Here's a rule you must internalize. If something feels urgent, slow down. Urgency is often a signal that someone wants to rush your judgment. You don't need their permission to take time. Calm people are hard to trap because they don't commit emotionally too early. They don't promise fast. They don't attach quickly. They don't react blindly. They observe first. Let's make this practical. Before any emotional response, ask yourself 3 questions. What happens if I say nothing? What happens if I wait? What happens if I respond later with clarity? Those questions neutralize impulse. That's the key. Quiet minds also delay gratification. They don't chase emotional payoff. They sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term position. That discipline compounds quietly. Look at people who self-sabotage. They choose comfort over strategy, expression over restraint, now over later. Then they're surprised by consequences. Consequences were visible. They just weren't looking ahead. The quiet mind also prepares in advance. It rehearses calm. It anticipates pressure. It decides behavior before emotion arrives. Preparation kills surprise. Surprise is what breaks emotional people. Preparation is what protects calm ones. Think long. Move slow. Another truth. People who think ahead rarely need to fix things later. Prevention beats repair. Silence prevents damage. That explanation cannot undo. Let's talk about ego. Ego wants to win now. Discipline wants to win overall. Ego is impatient. Discipline is patient. That's the conflict inside you. You have a choice. Quiet minds accept uncertainty. They don't need immediate resolution. They don't panic in ambiguity. They understand that clarity often comes after waiting. Waiting is not weakness. Waiting is intelligence. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Extend your time horizon. When emotion rises, mentally fast forward. Ask, how does this look in a week? In a month? In a year? If it won't matter later, it doesn't deserve intensity now. Practice delayed response. Not avoidance. Not fear. Intentional delay. Let emotion cool. Let clarity rise. Then act. Reduce your emotional speed. Slower responses. Fewer words. Longer pauses. Speed is the enemy of foresight. Remember this. The quiet mind is never rushed, because it's already ahead. While others chase moments, you shape outcomes. You've learned to think beyond now. You've learned to replace urgency with patience. You've learned to trade reaction for foresight. But there is one final stage. When you think ahead long enough, react less often, and detach consistently, something changes. Nothing reaches you anymore. You are no longer just calm. You are untouchable. You learn to think ahead. Now let's complete the transformation. Chapter 9. Emotional strength is boring, and that's the point. Most people are addicted to intensity. They want passion. They want fire. They want emotional movement so they can feel powerful. That addiction is why they lose. Because real emotional strength is boring. That's the key. Real strength does not announce itself. It doesn't spike. It doesn't crash. It doesn't demand attention. It shows up quietly, consistently, relentlessly, and because it looks uneventful, most people dismiss it. That's why it wins. You have a choice. Let's dismantle the illusion. Emotional intensity feels productive, feels meaningful, feels like progress. But intensity is not progress. Intensity is stimulation, and stimulation burns out. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Look closely at emotionally intense people. They start fast. They talk big. They promise change. Then they disappear. Why? Because intensity cannot be sustained. It demands constant emotional fuel. And eventually that fuel runs out. Calm consistency does not need fuel. It runs on systems, on habits, on discipline. It doesn't care how you feel today. It executes anyway. That's the key. Here's the truth no one wants to accept. If your discipline depends on motivation, you are not disciplined. You are entertained. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. Emotionally strong people are boring to watch. They don't celebrate loudly. They don't complain publicly. They don't react dramatically. They do the same thing tomorrow that they did today and the day after. That repetition compounds. This is why emotional strength is misunderstood. From the outside, it looks flat. From the outside, it looks unimpressive. From the outside, it looks ordinary. But ordinary done consistently beats extraordinary done occasionally. Boring wins. Think about trust. Who do you trust more? The person who explodes emotionally, then apologizes, or the person who never explodes at all? Consistency builds trust. Trust builds influence. Influence builds power. That's the chain. Emotional intensity creates volatility. Volatility creates unpredictability. And unpredictability destroys reliability. People cannot rely on someone who is emotionally inconsistent. They don't know which version they'll get. Calm people remove that uncertainty. Same tone, same pace, same behavior, day after day. That sameness is not weakness. It's authority. Here's another hard truth. Drama is entertaining because it feels alive. But drama destroys focus, pulls attention outward, scatters energy, keeps you reactive. Calm people opt out of drama completely. They don't comment on everything. They don't engage every provocation. They don't chase emotional stimulation. They conserve energy. Energy conservation is power. When others burn energy emotionally, you're storing it. When others crash, you continue. That's the key. Emotionally strong people operate in a narrow emotional range. Not too high, not too low, neutral, centered, steady. This range protects decision-making. If your emotions swing wildly, your decisions swing with them. If your emotions are steady, your decisions stabilize. Stability produces progress without noise. Progress without noise looks boring. That's why people quit. Most people mistake boredom for stagnation. They think, if it doesn't feel intense, it's not working. Wrong. If it feels boring, it's probably sustainable. And sustainability always wins long term. Let's talk about habits. Emotionally weak people rely on mood. I'll do it when I feel like it. I'll stay calm if today goes well. I'll be disciplined when I'm motivated. That's not discipline. That's negotiation. Emotionally strong people remove negotiation. They don't ask how they feel. They follow the system. They wake up steady. They respond steadily. They end the day steady. No emotional bargaining. Boring routines create predictable outcomes. Predictable outcomes create confidence. Confidence, real confidence, does not look emotional. It looks calm. Here's something most people never realize. If you crave emotional reward for staying disciplined, you will abandon discipline when the reward disappears. Discipline must work, even when it feels dull. That's the test. Emotionally strong people don't need applause. They don't post every win. They don't announce every move. They don't explain every decision. They let results speak later. You don't need their permission to work quietly. This is where ego fights back. Ego wants recognition, validation, reaction. Discipline ignores ego. That's why discipline feels boring. Because ego is starving. Good. Let it starve. Boring discipline also prevents burnout. No emotional spikes means no emotional crashes. No crashes means No recovery cycles. You move forward steadily, while others restart repeatedly. Think about consistency again. One calm decision is not impressive. 10 calm decisions in a row is rare. 100 calm decisions is dominance. Boring wins. Emotionally strong people also recover faster because they don't overreact. They don't overcorrect. Small adjustments. No drama. No spirals. Efficiency compounds quietly. Now let's be practical. Here's how you train boring strength. Stop reacting for stimulation. Stop speaking to feel important. Stop engaging just to feel alive. Sit with calm. Sit with routine. Sit with silence. Reduce your emotional range on purpose. Less excitement. Less anger. Less anxiety. Aim for neutral. Neutral is powerful. Another discipline. Stop romanticizing struggle. Struggle looks intense, but calm progress looks boring. Choose boring progress. That's the key. If you identify as an emotional person, discipline will feel uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is the price of control. Pay it. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Build a boring emotional routine. Same wake-up tone. Same response rules. Same end-of-day shutdown. No emotional performances. Track consistency, not intensity. Did you stay calm today? Did you avoid unnecessary reactions? Did you follow your rules? Those are real wins. Remember this. Excitement fades. Drama collapses. Emotion burns out. Discipline compounds. And compounding always looks boring. Until it wins. Boring wins. You've now reached a critical point. You stopped reacting. You learned patience. You built consistency. From the outside, it looks uneventful. From the inside, you are changing permanently. But there is one final step. When nothing excites you too much, when nothing angers you deeply, when nothing destabilizes you anymore, you become something rare, untouchable. You mastered boring discipline. Now let's finish the transformation. Chapter 10. Become untouchable. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. That is not a slogan. That is the final outcome of discipline. That's the key. Most people live reactively. Their mood is controlled by words. Their behavior is controlled by opinions. Their energy is controlled by events. They think this is normal. It's not. It's captivity. You have a choice. Every emotional trigger is a leash. Someone says something. You react. Something goes wrong. You spiral. Someone disrespects you. You explode. In every case, you did not act. You were pulled. And whoever pulls your emotions controls you. Becoming untouchable means nothing outside you has direct access inside you. No instant reactions. No emotional hijacks. No loss of control. That's freedom. Let's be clear. Untouchable does not mean cold. It does not mean detached from life. It does not mean passive. It means self-governed. It means your inner state is not up for negotiation. You are in control. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they feel. That's not freedom. That's impulse. Real freedom is not being forced. To act by emotion is not about feeling more. It's about needing less. Emotional independence is the highest form of freedom. Because once you are emotionally independent, No one can rush you. No one can bait you. No one can manipulate you. They can try, but they can't move you. Think about how powerful that is. Criticism doesn't destabilize you. Praise doesn't inflate you. Rejection doesn't break you. Approval doesn't control you. You are steady, centered, untouchable. Here's the truth most people never reach. The moment you stop needing reactions, you gain leverage everywhere. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You stop defending. You act. And action without emotional noise is authority. Untouchable people don't argue emotionally. They don't defend their identity. They don't fight for validation. They let outcomes speak. And outcomes speak loudly. Over time, when you become untouchable, something shifts. People sense it. They don't know why, but they adjust their behavior around you. They speak more carefully. They test less. They respect boundaries faster. Not because you demanded respect, because you don't need it. That's the key. Let's talk about control again. Control is not domination. It's stability. If you are stable, others must adapt to you. If you are unstable, you must adapt to others. You have a choice. Untouchable people control themselves first. They don't try to control conversations. They don't try to control outcomes. They don't try to control people. They control reactions. And reaction control creates situational control automatically. Think about this carefully. If someone can make you angry on command, they own you. If someone can make you anxious instantly, they own you. If someone can ruin your focus with a sentence, they own you. Untouchable people are not owned. Now let's address fear. Fear only works when it triggers action. If fear rises, and you don't act on it immediately, fear loses power. Calm neutralizes fear. That's the key. Untouchable people feel fear. They feel anger. They feel emotion. But emotion does not decide for them. Discipline does. It's not about removing emotion. It's about commanding it. This is why the calm mind always wins. Not because it's smarter. Not because it's stronger physically. But because it cannot be rushed, baited, or destabilized. The calm mind chooses its moves. Let's make this practical. Becoming untouchable is trained. It does not happen by understanding alone. It happens by repetition. Here are the final disciplines. First, pause by default. Emotion rises. Pause. No exceptions. Pause breaks control attempts. Second, reduce emotional expression. Not suppression. Reduction. Say less. React slower. Express selectively. Less output means less leverage for others. Third, detach from outcomes. Do the right thing, without emotional attachment to result. Win calmly. Lose calmly. Outcome independence is emotional independence. Fourth, stop personalizing events. Most things are not about you. They are about other people's fear, ego, and confusion. Untouchable people don't absorb noise. Fifth, build internal validation. If you need external confirmation, you are touchable. If you trust your standards, you are free. You don't need their permission. This is where everything comes together. You learned silence. You learned detachment. You learned patience. You learned consistency. Now those skills fuse. Untouchable does not mean invincible. Life will still hit you. loss, pressure, unexpected events. But hits no longer knock you off center. You absorb them, process them, respond deliberately. Here's another truth. People who are untouchable rarely need to prove anything. They don't posture. They don't threaten. They don't argue emotionally. Their presence is enough. This is what quiet dominance looks like. No noise, no drama, no emotional spikes, just control. You are in control. Now look back. You used to react. You used to explain. You used to rush. Now you pause. You observe. You choose. That is the transformation. Let me remind you of the core truth one last time. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. When nothing controls you, you are free. This audiobook was never about motivation. It was about discipline. It was never about hype. It was about control. And control always wins. So here is your final instruction. Live calmly on purpose. Not sometimes. Not when it's easy. Always. Let others react. Let others panic. Let others explain. You won't. Because now you know. You are in control. The calm mind always wins. And once you reach this state, no one can take it from you. You are untouchable. You've heard it now. The calm mind always wins. Not because it's faster. Not because it's louder. But because it's disciplined. From this moment forward, you have a choice. React or remain calm. Explain or stay silent. Follow emotion or command it. Every time you choose calm, you reclaim power. Every time you stay silent, you gain leverage. Every time you don't react, you win. So here's the challenge. For the next 7 days, do not react emotionally to anything. Observe. Pause. Choose. Let others be loud. Let others lose control. You won't. Because now you understand the truth. The calm mind always wins.